place to connect with each other. So if you're not familiar, check them out. They have some awesome events, a mentor program, a salary survey, and some awesome conferences that'll hopefully be starting soon. And Workit, which is a newer organization that's reimagining the future of career development and acceleration through community connection and mentorship. So I'm working with Workit, and I suggest you check them out. We're going to be doing some pretty cool stuff over the summer and starting in the fall. So if you're not familiar with either of those, check them out. Today, I'm really excited to be able to moderate this panel, Crossing the Product Career Chasm. I think it's a really interesting topic. I know my own experience, there's a couple things about product management which are interesting, which is most product managers, maybe changing recently, probably didn't go to a formal program or school to get into product management. I know that's changing with some great organizations now. And so it's a little hard to get in. And then there's, the path is somewhat ill-defined. It's getting a little bit more standardized, but, using a term like product manager or senior product manager, or things like that at two different companies can mean two different things. And there's many paths. So I think it's beautiful that we come together and we hear from some really smart and accomplished people in our community who have each taken their own unique journey to become what I would call a product leader in their own way. And so today we just really want to explore, what was their journey, what was their story. And I think it's lovely to hear that, because it gives folks options and sort of clarity potentially to figure out what you want to do and what you want to try in your career. So I appreciate everyone being here. We're going to start with a little bit of moderated Q&A between me and the panel and the panelists. And then at the end, we're going to leave some time for questions. So if you have those, please put it into the chat. And so with that, I'm going to introduce our panelists. I'm going to ask them to do quick intros after I introduce them, but really this whole panel, I think, is an exploration of folks' stories. So hopefully there'll be lots of space to explore, who folks are and their journeys and their wisdom. So thanks to everyone for being here. So today I'm very happy to be joined by three amazing folks. Katie Holden, VP of Product at Workday, Adam Tornez, Staff Product at Twitter, and Jess Sherlock, a founder at Carousel Technologies. All very cool companies and very cool people. So check them out and feel free to connect with them after this event. Just to start us off, I think it's important when you're telling a story to have a good foundation about, who is this person and where are they coming from. I'd love each of you just in a couple sentences to sort of introduce yourself, tell us, who you are, a couple maybe highlights just to ground us, and then we'll use that as a foundation to explore through the rest of the session. So with that said, Katie, would you like to kick us off?
Sure. So the very short version, my name's Katie Holden. My current job now, as of a month ago, is Vice President of Workday's UI Platform Organization. 250 people globally. It includes product management, engineering, and QA. But that's as of last month. My short version of a path before this was studied engineering in college, did a few internships in software and product, worked at a couple of startups, and then landed at Workday. So I've kind of seen a spectrum of company styles, primarily in product, although my now role is more of a general manager, which is one of the career paths we can talk a bit more about over the course of the panel.
Very cool. Thank you. Adam, you want to go next?
Sure. Hi, everybody. I'm Adam. I guess my short story is started as an engineer by trade out of college. My first job, realized that's not really what I wanted to do. Made the transition to product management and migrated to the Denver Boulder area. There I started what is now the Colorado Product Foundation as a selfish tool for me and a couple other folks to learn product management. So was a product manager at a couple different successful startups, and then joined Twitter, where I've been for the last 7 years following an acquisition, and have grown and done different things within the Twitter organization since.
Awesome. Appreciate it. And Jess, you want to go?
Yeah, of course. So let's see, I come from a different slant. I went to school actually for film and television production, which really only set me up for product in the sense that I can manage teams. But after that, my experience was more in UX leadership. So I was a UX researcher and what we call the lead architect at a local agency here in Denver after quite a few years in marketing. So the early part of my career was actually all agency side, which meant I wasn't in-house at a company, right? I was contracting with other companies, which for product managers, we'll talk more about this, but I think that's an awesome path to get a feel for a lot of different project sizes, a lot of different industries, and really build your confidence in stakeholder management, because as a client lead, you have to communicate very clearly. So that, unbeknownst to me, really paved the way to a product role where a founder of a startup I ended up joining back in 2015, saw my skills, realized they were really applicable to product, and I joined as the first product manager. In those years, kind of learned what it meant to be product in-house. Learned a lot about what not to do when it comes to managing my time and energy. So happy to talk about that burnout path. And most recently joined as a co-founder for Carousel with my co-founder, Joe. And I'm happy to talk more about what we're doing, but we're an ed tech startup, pre-revenue, and focusing on our pre-seed round and getting our initial MVP to market. So I'll talk a lot about that today.
Yeah, well, cool. I appreciate everyone being here and sharing. I think it's such a lovely way to give back to the community. I think in the first part, I'm thinking about, really sharing your current role and using that as a backdrop a little later on for the story of how did you get there and what was that journey like, and just sort of telling that in more depth. I think to kick us off, I'd love, for each of you to give us maybe in a couple of minutes, a little bit more deeper sense of your current role. What is it like day to day? Where do you spend a lot of your time? What's different about it from previous roles? And I think an interesting lens I would share if anybody wants to use it is, what are those things that people that are attending today probably don't know about? What's not the thing everybody knows about a VP of product or someone that's working with a founder or a startup or has been with an organization and grown and tried a lot of different paths within it. I just think that might be a really interesting thing since, that's why we come here, to sort of hear the things that we can't find other places. So with that, is there anybody that would like to kick us off? Go for it. How about Katie? Would you like to go?
Yeah, sure. Okay, so I'm learning about my new role being a month in. Had a little bit of visibility, but even when you report to a VP before you become one, you might think you know their role. And then you're like, oh, this feels different. So, take this for what it is, which is about a month in. I was doing more of a general manager role before this as well. Prior to this, I had about 75 people. It was a development, design, PM, research, and our doc team. But the VP role feels different. Here's some of the more interesting parts. Like, I would say almost every meeting I'm in now is very high stakes for the team in the meeting with me. That feels different, right? Usually by the time a meeting's happening with me, it's because a decision is really in the gray area, very hard to make. It's because some other team in Workday is not playing ball with us. So that's that team's one meeting of the week. But for me, that's my entire calendar. So that's interesting. It feels different. It definitely still uses a lot of the product skill set of getting to the bottom of things. What are we really talking about? How can we cut to the chase? I think a huge part of my role now is also just straight people. I think we make a big deal about first line manager because that's the first time when you're really more responsible for a team and their career paths and what's going on and how can you help. At the organizational level, though, it feels a lot more like, oh gosh, I can't even use sports metaphors because I'm so bad at them. But I think it would feel a bit more like being a head football coach or chef of a very busy kitchen, where every level of people matters to me. My directs, their management teams, our most senior technical contributors, our most senior product contributors, and having a pulse on how we're doing it an organism perspective is sort of a black art of senior leadership. I think there are a lot of people who are just oh, I'm going to focus on the business or I'm going to set the goals. But I see this role as heavily people focused. So again, it's using a lot of those product skills. So anyway, those are maybe some of the more interesting parts. Probably time-wise, it's 30% people briefing me on stuff just so I know what's happening. 30% is probably alignment. like these things aren't working together. Should they be? How do I know? It's kind of navigating the larger Workday strategy to make sure we're aligned. And then like the other 30% is people, like I was saying, just straight time with people.
I'm curious, is there anything that you found to be particularly helpful as you sort of navigate those things that are a little bit newer and different to you?
Yeah, I mean, I just believe software is a team sport. I'm so bad in isolation. I can just sit here and spin by myself at my desk. So what's helpful for me is having a team of people that I know and trust who can like be a soundboard with me on a different topic, right? Like have like this constellation of people I know and love now where I'm like, hey, can I find 15 minutes with you, Nav, to ask what the heck this, technical term means? I love Jess before this was talking about like how she's struggling with padding, like knowing the person you can go to if you're really struggling with something to like get you over the hurdle or give you quick advice. So I definitely have a team of people. In fact, I see someone on this call, you know who you are, I come and find you.
Very cool.
Need a soundboard. So that's probably the main thing for me. I really rely on people to do my job well.
Okay. Yeah, that's really cool. I think that's beautiful to sort of know and honor that person's skill set and their wisdom. So that's really cool. All right. I don't know, Adam, would you like to sort of share your experience a little bit about, in your current role, what's it like? What's interesting? What
yeah.
You should know?
So I'm a staff product manager at Twitter. And this is a relatively new role at Twitter, but just in product management generally. For a long time, the individual contributor career path of a product management really capped out as a senior product manager. And from there, you had to go into a management track. I think more and more companies, especially larger companies, are recognizing the importance of having really strong individual contributors in a product role. And so that's the track that I'm currently on, though I do have some management experience as well. I think a lot of my focus over the last couple of years and currently is essentially launching new strategies and business units across our organization. So I have served as a pseudo general manager for non-product, non-engineering people with no direct reports on a couple occasions recently. I think one of the more interesting things about the staff or often principal product manager role is you assume like you're just working on bigger projects in a lot of cases and still working very closely with engineering teams. You do drift still in the IC track more and more from working with the actual teams to develop software as you get higher and higher in an organization. That's not for everybody, because that's something that a lot of people fell in love with product doing. So I am fortunate to maintain some of that, but I spend a ton of my time in meetings and strategy, doing a lot of what Katie said. I firmly believe in like the software development is a team sport mantra that Katie shared. I think doing a lot of entrepreneurship, if you will, or starting new business units at Twitter has been isolating at times, trying to get things off the ground. And it's been so much more successful even when there's one other person to be your sounding board and partner, even if they're not a product manager or engineer. Like the most successful example I have was partnering with somebody in marketing, just who's on the same page and can like work through it with you. So yeah, a lot of my time is focused on strategy and a lot of people and organizational stuff. Even though I'm not the product lead for our overall organization, managing a bunch of other product managers currently, I'm on the leadership team for our organization, and in all of those conversations about how we're working as a team, how we're working with our partners in developer relations in our case, or product marketing, what have you. So it's a lot of people and cross-organizational stuff.
I'm curious, in your tenure at Twitter, did that staff role exist when you started?
No, great question. It did not. It was
Can you talk a little bit about how that happened?
Yeah, it was introduced probably 3 years ago. I had been a senior product manager for a while. My organization didn't have a lot of opportunities for significant management experience. I was fortunate to manage a couple people after fighting to do so for a long time for my own interest in career growth and the needs to grow our team. That I was fortunate to manage a couple people, but the bar for getting to what was our group product manager role was really high. You had to manage like 5 or 6 people for a long period of time. And so like my career growth felt very stunted, and I was fortunate that Twitter like recognized the importance of this individual contributor track. And I think I was the very first internal person to become a staff product manager after they rolled that out.
Do you feel like you had to do like any advocating or like any interesting parts of helping it happen? Or
I think it was a matter of circumstance, and like was fortunate, potentially driven by the ability to bring in outside candidates. I wasn't involved in like advocating for that decision or whatever, though I had a couple conversations about it at times. But it was mostly with my manager, and he wasn't actively involved in those decisions either. So
yeah, I appreciate you sharing. Awesome. All right, Jess, would you like to share a little bit about your story and your journey and what you found interesting?
Yeah, so it's everything you both are saying is resonating so much because I've been in the product role in so many different capacities. So I've been, the like first product manager on a team of 26, where I'm kind of taking things over from the founders, and we just closed a Series A where it's all about getting to, traction and growth. I've been a product manager within teams of these really large established organizations, right? And maybe I'm like an agency partner, but still kind of working in these massive teams where there's tons and tons of communication and specific people who own specific things. And half your job is remembering who to go to for which thing. And then, by the time I left Go Spot Check in late, 2018, I was director of product doing a lot of what you're describing, Katie. I mean, we essentially, between me and the product co-founder, we were kind of tag teaming the VP role. And so certain components of it related to people management or strategy, we would divide and conquer on. So yeah, I've seen it all. And I guess what I would say is if you want to do all those things and not have a whole bunch of people to go to, then you should be a founder. So yeah, my current role right now, I joke about it, but it's something that I actually really love. I love being both super close to the business and being a part of the team that's building. It is not sustainable forever. And I have to kind of remember that these are the good old days, right? Because at a point we're going to have more employees. But right now it's, me and my co-founder, we have 2 employees. And just to give you a sense for how my week has looked, let's see, I was in some pitch conversations with investors because, like I mentioned, we're trying to close a pre-seed. I've been personally working on the redesign of our Webflow site, using some templates, of course, but also creating some of my own graphics in Figma. And I've been managing the backlog with developers, working towards getting our MVP product out, working with our contract designer who's helping us with those designs. And in addition to that, yesterday, sitting with my co-founder and looking at a roadmap, a runway model to try to make some decisions over how we're going to use the cash that we do have, right? Which, in what I was, Adam, as we were talking yesterday, I think what's been really fascinating about this shift from, being an employee at a startup and working as a product manager to now being a founder who's responsible for everything product. It's really incredible to be able to be that close to the realities of the business. Because it often felt like, in hindsight, prior to being a founder, I had a hard time understanding where my founders were coming from. It sometimes felt like they were, wishy-washy on decisions, or it might have sometimes felt like, hey, why are we changing our mind all the time? And I think now reflecting on it, it wasn't malicious. I actually think it was just a function of how quickly the day-to-day was changing in a Series A and a Series B startup, and that all of that detail couldn't necessarily be shared down to the teams. We were just kind of reacting to those decisions. So now, as a founder, what I've been, one of our values is really around transparency. And so part of what I'm trying to bring to the team is the right level of transparency where, we're making all of these decisions with data and finances in mind, but I really want the team to understand where it's coming from. So anyways, that was a big shift coming from being a team level product manager, is how do you, how can you recognize where your leaders and your founders are coming from? And I see Katie nodding a lot. And like we, as leaders, we always have visibility to aspects of the business that our team simply doesn't have or simply couldn't have. And those decisions have to be made with confidence and shared down. And so I think you're right, that team building and those relationships you're building with your team, part of the reason that's so important is so that they do trust you as you're navigating those ups and downs in the business.
I'm curious. It's really interesting, and I too have sort of seen this in talking to some other folks at really small startups, like pre-seed and stuff like that. It's like dynamics are a little different. I'm curious for you, like how does that feel? Like, do you show up and you're like, this is so interesting, or do you say like, oh my goodness, this is a new world? Like, what is that?
Yeah.
For you, like,
well, so it's been a year now, so I've had some time to get situated with it. I think in a lot of ways it's really exciting. I get bored easily. I think I hear this from a lot of product managers. Part of the reason we love the job is it's so crazy and diverse, and there's a lot of challenges that come up. So of course I really like it for that reason. The thing that you constantly have to remember, though, and I had to remember this even when I was working at GoSpotCheck, and I think our Series A was like 7 million or something. We closed 7 million, and immediately we were thinking about what happens when we run out. Do we have enough? How are we going to manage it? And so those challenges are still just as important, and even in some ways like easier to recognize when you have much less than. I wish we had 7 million in the bank. We don't, but I think what's really important to remember is that you can't get complacent. And so if anything, you have to kind of live in two worlds. On the one hand, we're building this product, it's going to market, we have people who are interested in it, we have a website, I'll plug it, joincarousel.io. I just pushed launch on it this morning. If you find bugs, let me know. But you're living in this world where you have to present as a business that is complete in some ways and ready in some ways, while knowing in reality that it's not. And you have to even more so be thinking about, the question I'm constantly asking myself is, can I simplify? From everything to, what decisions I'm making on the website, to do we need a video on the website or not, to can we simplify the way that this functionality works, to do we really need, in terms of our hiring plan, is there a simpler way to accomplish it? It's just constantly trying to be really mindful. And so if anything, it's a lot of the similar stresses I felt when I was on a larger team, but there's something about being on a larger team that gives you a buffer against feeling that as directly.
Yeah. You can almost you're just like, oh, all these other people probably have it, or
exactly. Somebody else has got that. And I mean, it just, you're a lot closer to it. There's not, that buffer just simply doesn't exist. So.
Yeah, no, I appreciate you sharing that. I mean, I think that's real. And if, other folks want to expand on this as we talk, I'd love to hear it. One thing we got a great question from the audience, and, I think we always leave questions to the end, and I really want to serve the people that are here. So I'm going to ask a question. I think it's a great question to fit into where we are. And I'd love, everybody just jump in if you have something to share. If not, that's fine. Yeah. But we had a question. Katie mentioned management is not for everyone. Can the panel expand on that? I think a lot of folks that we've seen try management and don't succeed. Why was that? So I think it's interesting, right? It's definitely a fork in the road. And, I don't know, how did you navigate that, or what wisdom do you have for other folks that are feeling maybe that's the direction, or they feel like they need to go in that direction for certain reasons? Who wants to kick us off?
Having done some before and not doing it now, I can potentially bring some flavor to this. I think it's not intuitive or natural for everybody. Like, it is a lot different than being a product manager. It's completely different skill set. Managing product managers is especially challenging or difficult because a lot of that is coaching on strategy and being a product manager, and just like career development and coaching and things like that. It can be a roller coaster of emotions that are really outside of your control in some cases. I've had within a couple weeks span, people on performance improvement plans and people getting promoted that are on my team. And it's like working on those two things is so different. But for me, it's a unique challenge. It's something that I want to do in the future and get better at, because it's a skill that I don't feel like I've mastered, that I want to get better at. Maybe it'll prove something that I'm not cut out for, or that I ultimately don't want to do in the long term. But it's currently something I aspire to take back on when there's an opportunity for me to do so.
Okay. And I'm curious, Katie, I know that was sort of directed based on a comment you made. What, could you sort of dig into that for us a little bit?
Yeah, I think I totally echo what Adam says, where it's, I think honing your people management craft is a career level thing in the same way honing your product craft is. And I think just speaking more from my personal experience, I think, when you guys see a great product manager in action, they're like this blend of like always focused on the business, like unemotional decision making, data driven, and clarity. But then we all know when it comes to actually building the friggin' thing, it's like a team of humans who are complicated and messy as hell, and that architect is spicy, and that designer's going off the friggin' rails, and they need to feel special. And like, I think the great product managers can do both, right? Stay grounded, be cool, keep everyone aligned on the business, but also work with the cast of people that are going to do the thing. So that's where I see them as similar to what people management starts to look like, right? As you sort of manage first-line managers, or if you start managing a management team of product management leads with their people, your function is always that balance, and it's just a matter of ratios about where your time gets spent, right? Where if you have staff product managers on your team like Adam, cool. You can actually focus a little bit less on that because you're like, Adam's brilliant. He's going to do more of this, right? If you don't, that might be more something the management team does. So there are definitely ratios at different companies, but for me, I think that blend of staying cool and calm and collected and not letting the emotions of the team and the org get in the way of what you need to do and feeling comfortable owning the business decision. I know you might really want X. The business can't support you doing X, right? That's part of my job too, is to align us to do the thing the business wants. But also treating them as a human that they are and saying that you hear them and you want to see other options or can you brainstorm. And I think just the more you go into management, a lot more of your role becomes those hard conversations because the employees that are happy take little management typically. Mm-hmm. And so I think you kind of have to almost you have to almost just enjoy the creative complexity of unpacking people. Honestly, some of my top performers are actually very complex to manage too, because they're so hungry and I just want to feed them with whatever fills their belly and their soul. So it's like a little puzzle, every single person. And I think you might enjoy that, but I think a lot of people don't, which is totally fine. Like it's a very emotionally tough job.
I think a lot of times in product, we think in hypotheses and experiments and how can we break down a batch size and try a smaller increment. Do you have any thoughts for people that are like, I think I want to be a manager. Like, is the best experiment to go become one? Or, are there other experiments or things to do that might help to try that out?
I think, there are kind of classical examples that this team has probably heard before. Stuff like mentor someone who's more junior in your org. It's a nice way to see if you enjoy using that muscle. One thing that the panel was talking about earlier that I kind of wanted to get back to is when you look at this panel, one thing that I noticed is all of us are sort of naturally curious about what's going on outside of just straight PM, right? We're like kind of outside of our lane quite a bit, dipping into this piece, dipping into that. And I think that generally is a great structure for career growth of any form. Mm-hmm. Senior management, IC track, founder, just that comfort and curiosity to kind of be outside your lane and dip in. So as it relates to more just like the management piece, I think the first step is just straight curiosity and then finding ways to scratch that itch. So stuff like find a manager somewhere else in the organization if you're at a big enough company and just like ask them about what they're doing or what they're thinking about or how did they think about this promotion and just having that curiosity. The other thing is offering help. This is like my career advice 101. If anyone is trying to get into a new role, trying to get a more senior role, trying to get into a startup and you're a big company person, trying to get out of a big company into a startup and you're branded, offer to help whoever is doing that job today. Mm-hmm. Manufacture an excuse. Hey, can I help you build your website? I've got some time on the weekend. Or like, hey, can I, anything, because it's really hard to get people's time for mentoring because at some level, senior people get so many requests. But if you just offer to help them with whatever skills you have, you're going to get way closer to them. They might become a sponsor for you. You're going to get exposure to that thing you want to do and learn so much. So in the management thing, which is your original question, Adam, I'm like, can you find a way to help out other people managers in the org? You're going to learn so much. It's going to be hard because sometimes management stuff is sensitive and confidential, but a lot of it isn't. A lot of it's like running a good team meeting. You can offer to help your manager do that. Like, let me control the agenda for your meeting. I'll ask for topics. So just offering help is, for me, one of those key career things. It really elevates a lot of opportunities.
Yeah, I super appreciate you sort of taking that back to just in general, sort of what helps, and the curiosity and connecting with other people to help or just to find reasons. I think that's awesome, and I think people appreciate it, because one thing I hear all about product managers, and folks here agree, or even leadership, like, it can be lonely, right? And it doesn't necessarily have to be, but I think it can be lonely a little bit.
Adam, can I add in
please.
A bit? The gentleman, I think, who asked the question was asking kind of why people fail. And I just wanted to share an anecdote, which I think maybe one of the unwritten things about becoming a leader, I actually hate the word manager, so I'm going to say leader instead. But becoming a leader is like, you end up teaching people how to be effective. And so oftentimes, especially in startup land, you end up in this situation where folks are promoted simply because they've been at a company or they were there early, whatever the case may be, even though they may not be a good leader. So actually look at the leaders above those leaders to say, are we actually finding people that have the characteristics, the behavior, the time management skills, whatever it is that we want to reproduce throughout the organization? Because really that's what you're creating when you're creating leaders, is a model for the people inside of those teams. Mm-hmm. And yes, someone asked about how you build these skills. There are hard skills, right? I had to learn how to write a performance improvement plan. It wasn't my favorite day. I've had to learn how to, keep good notes about those sorts of situations, and how to like deal with salary negotiations and legal whatnots. But honestly, a lot of the ways that I learned how to become a manager had a lot to do with developing my skills around things like time management, stakeholder communication, leadership communication, business essentials. It's not just one thing. So I just wanted to throw that in, that you're a multiplier in the organization. And that's often why people fail, is that your teams end up failing because organization inadvertently multiplies these negative characteristics.
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting point. I think it's interesting. There's another question and a topic I was curious to talk about. I think when we think about career development, there's all these cliches of there's soft skills, there's hard skills. Oh, I should be networking more. Oh, I should have a mentor. Oh, I need more experience before I'm worthy of that thing. Probably some other ones I didn't name. I think there's a question now after folks get into product. For folks that really want to be able to do the things they want to do and explore their curiosities and advance and be leaders, whatever that means to them, like, are there some things that stand out to you to maybe cut through that noise of all the things you could do? Like, what bubbles up to the top of the options or the underserved things that, maybe you would call out? And maybe it's things we've already mentioned, like time management or this, that, or the other, but what do you really call out? Like, what are those things that maybe people don't invest in enough, or the higher value things?
I would throw time management as like one of the top ones. Especially as an individual contributor, I think your velocity and good throughput, not just throughput for the sake of throughput, gets noticed. And that's like, you're able to take on more responsibility and you can be trusted to deliver on what you're asked to do. And those things get noticed, and those are the things that help you climb the career ladder as an individual contributor. So that's one. The other thing on the management thing, while I'm thinking about it, before we're too far from it, mentorship. Find opportunities for you to be a mentor. Shameless plug for Colorado Products mentorship program. We're always looking for more mid-level mentors to help the next generation. So, shameless plug.
Hey, it's a great way to connect with a mentor, and I think figuring out how do I connect with a mentor can be one of the biggest hurdles. So I think it's great. Yeah, not shameless at all.
I think I'm going to put my thumb on the scale for communication, which is such a boring word, but I'm going to try and do it with an anecdote, right? So I have this amazing group in my org right now who's like really struggling with a customer uptaking something, right? And they're like, look, it's amazing. And they have this gorgeous deck with like cards and glossy multimedia. And I was like, oh, this is what we're going to share. And they were like, yeah, I mean, look at everything we've done. And it was just the kind of the fundamentals of, I was like, guys, I feel like I'm looking at your product management homework and I'm giving you an A+. Like, you have done the product craft thing to a T. Problem statement, research summary, screenshots, nice, quick, quippy, depth, good pitch, right? Like, it was like they had done everything that we ask of a product manager. And the part that was missed was like, remember who you're talking to. They don't care. They don't know anything about product management. They literally don't care at all about 18 cards. They don't care how many there are. 18 is not impressive to them. They don't know what it takes to build 2 cards versus 10 cards. And, you know, it was like, the only point of communicating to them is, we heard you specifically have this problem, and this thing will definitely help. Why aren't you trying it? You know, this is like, it's got to be that simple. And I think product management in particular, because there's all these great books about mastering PM craft and PM career, it could almost get us a little bit too insular. Like, that stuff does matter to create quality product. I'm not coming after the process or the methodology, but the communication part sometimes I feel like just gets missed in the end. And we just start to summarize all the great work we did, when it's like, just get to the point, just say it, you know? And if you can do that with whether it's stakeholder management or customers or analysts or wherever you're talking to, I think it's a superpower, right? Know that you got the great craft behind the scenes and know that nobody cares. Just tell them what they need, you know?
I'm curious if to you that is a little bit more blunt and speaking your truth and candor, or whether it's almost like stepping out of the mindset a little bit of what might be a product manager might be in, and stepping into other mindsets or other mental models that other people might be coming from.
Yeah, I think it is empathy, like, to come to your like other mental models, Adam, of just like, it's I think there's a person I really respect who, one of their quotes is, remember that every person is the hero of their own story. You're the hero of your own story, and you're thinking, how's Katie doing? What's she done? And your customer is the hero of their own story, and your dev lead is the hero of their own story. And so when you kind of realize that, and it's not to say we're all super egotistical, but at some level, humans are just kind of like, look, I'm the Viking. This is my story, right? So I think just the empathy of like, who is this person? What do they care about? And then just thinking about the most crisp way to give them, to communicate what needs to be said, or to share with them what needs to be shared to get to the outcome you want. I think sometimes we forget, because we're seeing ourselves as the hero of the story. Maybe our dev team is the hero of the story. And that's all lovely for like internal audiences. Like, your dev team are the hero of their story, and we should totally rile them up when they do incredible stuff. But like, again, the customer doesn't care. So I think it's an empathy of like kind of setting your ego aside when it comes to communication and just focusing on who you're talking to.
Yeah, I think that's really beautiful. I like that. Yeah. So I'm curious for you, Jess, do you have a thought on this? Like,
yes.
I'm very curious too. Like, your story is so interesting. I feel like even you.
Well, I want to start by saying hard skills are important, right? You need to have communication skills. I completely agree with you, Katie. I completely agree with the fact that you need to be able to manage a meeting. You need to be able, I don't know, don't be that person who doesn't use like recurring calendar invites. Like, don't try to join a product team and not know how to use like the basic Google Suite tools or Slack, right? Like, there's that stuff. Even a backlog, whatever. Your boss will probably teach you a backlog. You can watch a couple of videos. It's not a big deal. Like, to me, it's build stuff. Like, I teach through General Assembly. I've been the lead product manager instructor in Denver since 2016. I'm taking a little bit of a sabbatical now to focus on the startup, but I've had hundreds of students come through the doors, and they all are constantly like, how do I get into it? And I've gotten to the point where honestly, I have a little bit of frustration, and I don't understand why it is that people believe tech jobs don't require skills. It would be the equivalent of me saying, I want to be a chef, or I want to manage a restaurant. You know, it's like, well, have you been a host? Have you been a busser? I don't know. I've never worked in restaurants, but you get my analogy here. And I think the same is with product, where for some reason, maybe it's the fact that product manager sounds like project manager, but there's this impression that product management is like an entry-level job. And I'll plug my talk because I constantly push people to it. It's on my LinkedIn if you want to find it. It's called How to Get Into Product Without a Title. It drives me bonkers that product has gotten this reputation as being an entry-level job when it is not. It is not. Even the most junior product manager role in an organization is going to be higher paid and higher responsibility and higher risk than any other junior role in the organization, period. Mm. So because you're controlling tens of thousands of dollars worth of development resources, you have the potential to put the company at security risks, at branding or copyright risks, whatever, based on whatever it is that you end up building that might take the company away from their goals and strategies. So anyways, I'll get off my soapbox. But my point is, it's not an entry-level role. So if you think it is, watch my talk on my LinkedIn, focus on getting into a tech company first. From there, when you're trying to get into product, show me stuff you've built. Mm-hmm. Fiddle, do weekend projects, find devs who want to build stuff. Use a no-code platform. Teach yourself SQL. Like, I could go on for days. To me, it's like, if it would be like meeting a chef who told you they don't have any knives at home. I wouldn't believe you, right? So I want to see that hustle. I want to see you at hackathons. I want to see stuff that you've messed around with, even if it's failed. Learn Figma. Build a prototype. I don't care if it's code, but show me a problem and show me a solution. Every product you use every day has problems. And if you're saying you can't, I don't think you have the passion to get into it. So that's what I think is, in addition to all that other stuff, build something.
I'm curious. It makes me think of something I've seen, which I feel like sometimes I've seen, like there's this aspect of representing yourself that's how you tell your story. Mm-hmm. And I think some people feel like they're not worthy to tell their story. And it's like an interesting thing just to figure out, how do you tell your story? You're not making anything up. You're figuring out like how to be a communicator, to Katie's point,
exactly.
I think.
Yeah. And it's up to you. It's up to you as a product manager or a someone who desires to be in product management to tell that story. And I think I can think of a couple folks right off the bat who, I eventually put into product roles. One was a gentleman who was like a product analyst or something at another company and was, trying to manage the backlog and was essentially a product manager that wasn't being recognized. And he had so much potential and so much grit, and he now has been really successful in his career. And I think of someone else who, had been at GoSpotCheck for years in the support department, ended up in QA, and he just had the right mindset and really deeply understood our customers, and he was perfect for a PM position. So I actually think in some ways, and this is going to drive a lot of people nuts, in some ways, folks who have that accidental product manager path, I think, end up in it for those reasons. They just started to do the right things. Mm. They started owning, they started going out of their swim lane, they started building stuff, and eventually they're in the right time at the right place. And a lot of folks, I think, who are going after it really directly might be missing those fundamentals of really practicing that craft first and focusing on being near or close to product development first. I don't know. That, like I said, it's my soapbox on the topic.
So I'm curious, like for people that maybe feel like there is something next and they want to try that thing. Like, do you have any thoughts on expressing that intent, exploring that journey? Like, how do you connect with the next opportunity? How do you find the interesting things? How do you let people know what you're interested in? Like, what have you done to be helpful?
Yes. Step number one, I tell everyone this. Step number one, if you're at an organization that has product people and you don't know those product people, you're missing out on a huge opportunity. I know a lot of product folks. I mean, Adam, Katie, if you got an offer for help, somebody's like, hey, can I help you QA some stuff? Hey, can I help you with some acceptance criteria? Hey, would you say no? Absolutely not. So if you have product people or product designers or product researchers, anybody who's in the product team at your organization and you're not connected with them, you're missing out on a huge opportunity. So step one, connect with those teams, buy them coffee, whatever. Try to ask if you can help. So that to me is the most obvious, because then maybe you can swindle yourself into like some sort of junior product role that, because often it's like you got to have the title to get the next job. So maybe that's how you get it. The other thing I would say is, it hasn't been as much in the days of COVID, but, hackathons, boot camps. I'll plug GA here. General Assembly does lots and lots of events with lots of people who are new to the field. So if you don't work at a company with product people, go out and try to find maybe like a new grad from a dev program or a new grad from a design program. Those folks often, they have to have a portfolio. Product people, for better or worse, we don't really need a portfolio, but starting to become a thing. But for devs and designers, they have to. And so if they got an opportunity to work with someone who can help them figure out what to build on their portfolio, even if it's just a fun project, try that. It's also going to give you that ability to speak to using your skills. And then I suppose the third angle is there's starting to pop up some websites where you can join teams that are working on projects, or even volunteer at companies who are looking for help building stuff. But I think, I guess the one takeaway would just be kind of go into yes mode for a while, meet a lot of people. And I think just that alone can get you really far. Anecdotally, I had a student he was actually a therapist, believe it or not, in an eating disorder clinic, a therapist in an eating disorder clinic, which is so far away from product. But that company decided they wanted to build some apps to help their clients. So guess what? He noodled his way into that. And then he took a class. He started meeting people. He networked like crazy. And he ended up with a UX researcher job years later. So, it's just a lot of grit and hustle.
Yeah, that's cool. I assume what you mean by yes mode is sort of just having a very open mindset.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
And almost considering anything and everything.
Totally. Because everyone's story is going to be different, right? This is not plumbing. I can't tell you to go down the street to Joe's Plumbing and get an apprenticeship. I'm sorry. It's unfortunately, the tech industry, for better or worse, revolves around your network right now. And I think that's the one way that I think it works best. Or get into a tech company. I talk a lot about that in my talk on LinkedIn is, otherwise use your transferable skills. If you've got a sales background, try to get into sales at a tech company. If you've got an account management background, get into a tech company as an account manager. And then get close to product. So it kind of depends what you're starting.
Yeah, I think those are really cool ideas, and I love you sharing your talk. I think that sounds like a great resource. I'm curious, Katie or Adam, do you have any other thoughts on how you sort of get to the next thing, find the next thing, try the next thing?
Strong plus one to what Jess said about getting to know the PMs at your company. It's so much easier to break into product management within the company you're at versus finding your first role at another company. And that even if the product managers you're building relationships with and proving yourself with at your current company can't create a role for you, they can be a great resource and reference for another company. That's helped me get into product management to begin with. And I know at least one other person on this call that I used to work with had kind of some similar experience with something like that. So big plus one to that.
Yeah, I think my number one go-to advice for breaking into product management is one of the last things that Jess talked about. I haven't seen many people do awesome side hustle and get in, but I agree it's totally an option. I don't know why though. People maybe just they get tired or they get busy in their day job. But if you just take the skills you already have and map it to whatever the heck the first role is that meets that thing, services, support, marketing, copywriter, just whatever the closest hard skill you have to get into a tech company is step one. And then step two is just buddy up to the product team, start helping them, offer your I love Jess saying, do QA. Oh, you want me to write some acceptance criteria for you? You want me to review those for you? I can spell check. Just do whatever you can to be helpful. And if you have gumption and hustle in whatever your role is, I don't care what it is, services, sales, any background, and then a junior PM role opens at that company, it's yours. Because they're always going to hire a junior PM from the inside for a star employee who wants to go there, versus trying to find a junior person from the outside. That's worked for over half dozen people. I've given this advice for years. It just always works. You have to just be a star in your current role, whatever the function is, be extremely helpful to the product team. When that role opens, it's going to be yours. It's a long path. It's not fast, right? I'm talking about a couple year, 2 to 3 year commitment to actually see something like this through. But in terms of would I bet on it? That's the path I bet on.
I'm curious, opening it up to anyone that is maybe in a more mid-level role as a product person and may want to try a new company or try a new industry or something like that. one thing I thought I would hear more today, and I'm curious about it, is there's a lot about connecting with people and partnering and pairing and things like that. It felt very much like that was all in my company. And I'm curious, like, in terms of like a product community in Colorado, or networking or reaching out to different companies or different organizations, like, do you have any thoughts on that? I mean, did we not hear it because like you just feel like, it's just so valuable to focus on your current company, or like, what are, because I think that can be scary for people. And I think, some people hate networking, some people embrace it, and it's a big part of what they do. Like, what's your journey been? What's your thought on that? What's the scariest networking thing you ever did?
Oh my God. I don't think I have much to say on this one. I went the route of like becoming an instructor at General Assembly, and if you Google me, there's countless panels like this. So I mean, my angle was always just to get out there and share my perspective, which got me into a really nice spot where folks, there's some instant credibility there when I get Googled. So I do tell folks, in addition to the in-person networking, consider if there's, can you join a panel or can you produce some content? Because nowadays, I think there's something to be said for, if you Google someone, like Google Katie Holden product, and there's some thought leadership, and I can get to know her point of view on product before I even meet her. I think that can be huge. So I guess at first, these sorts of things really scared me, but over time, they ended up paying off, tenfold with just the folks I was able to meet and connect with during them.
That's cool. I like that. Anybody else? Any other thoughts?
I would say for early career people, like, your first 5 years as a PM, I would actually focus a little bit more internally. This sounds a little controversial, to be and do good work. Because what happens is in a community like Colorado, those people go on, right? Oh, cool company hired me away. And you want that person that hired away to be like, I would love to work with Adam again. I would love to work with Jess again. So if you had to kind of pick where to spend more of your time for early career, I'd really recommend a little bit more inside, because those inside first batch are going to be the ones that start to take you to your next companies that are interesting. I think by the time you're more like mid-level career and you're thinking like, wow, I need to land another leadership position, whether that's a leadership IC position or a leadership more from the like people leadership side, I do think some of the networking starts to help, but I think the shallow networking is great because you can meet a lot of people and hear about what's going on and learn what cool companies are. But I actually would say like deep networking starts to become a lot more valuable, where like for me, networking looks more like, I'm going to reach out to Jess because I think she sounds like an expert on this specific topic that I'm struggling with. And I want to actually just have a proper cup of coffee with her for an hour. It's like pretty deep networking. Like, I've pre-selected her because she looks like she could help me. I have a real situation I'm grappling with that we could like share on. And, the kind of cocktail hour networking stuff, I've never been that good at because I just get very tired quickly as a semi-introvert. But the deeper networking of like finding someone out there who I could reach out to and really help me on something like concrete, I find forges that relationship a lot deeper and then can be more helpful as you're looking at, I'll say, like larger lateral moves at companies you might not even know about.
Yeah. Yeah, better signal to noise. Yep. Yeah, for sure. All right. Any other parting thoughts? We're getting towards the end. So
I'd add like getting involved in the Colorado product community, like Colorado Product Foundation and our meetup events and Slack community and stuff like that. That's how I met Katie and Jess, and I've hired or referred plenty of people. I know a lot of other people have done that just based on the networking and people you meet there. It's thousands of people in the community started it for the purpose of learning and collective growth. So shout out to and plug for that.
Yeah, totally agree. If you're not there, get there, check it out. It's beautiful. All right. Well, I want to respect everyone's time and give everyone a few minutes to respect their humanity before whatever they have next in the day. I really want to just deeply appreciate our panelists. I think it's so beautiful to share your wisdom and your story and sometimes feel a little vulnerable. So thank you so much to Katie and Adam and Jess. I know they are on LinkedIn. I know they are on the Googles. So I'm sure you can find them and we'll see them around. Thanks again to Boulder Startup Week, all the partners, Colorado Product Community, and Workit. If you're not familiar with any of those organizations, please check them out. And I hope you found something to take away today that, is a new option, a new possibility, maybe a new little experiment you will try to have a happy and fulfilling career. So thank you for attending today, and have a lovely weekend.
Awesome. Thank you. Thanks, Adam.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks for hosting us, Adam.